Hello to everyone. We have yet another fabulous facilitator who is going to be joining us this year. I have had the pleasure of knowing Marina for a few years now. She's been a contributor to at least one of the Practical Strengths books, if not two. I can't remember now, but you've contributed to a couple of the books. And I know you attended the Practical Strengths Forum last year and you were a volunteer. And we are super lucky this year to have you as a facilitator. So Marina, please do us a favor and kind of introduce yourself and let the people know who you are, where you are, and what you do in the world.
Hi, Joy, everyone. Thank you. I contributed to one of your books about communication, but in general, I'm very inspired by everything you do, all the 100 wonderful things you do.
Like
I'm
my ideation.
ideation activator, right?
Yep.
The combo. So
Yep.
I'm Marina. Um, I'm passionate about helping people understand each other, feel valued, build connections. And for me, it's really about creating those spaces where people just really, really care about each other. A little bit about me. I was born in Ukraine. I grew up in Israel, and I worked in Israel as a psychologist in the organizational field. And then more than 10 years ago now, we moved to
Wow.
California, to the Bay Area. And here I studied positive psychology coaching at San Francisco State University. And that's also where I discovered the CliftonStrengths, fell in love with that. And years later, actually, when the pandemic started, I became a Gallup Certified Coach. I think it was the first or like the second online cohort
No.
for Gallup. Yeah. So it's opened that opportunity. And then I got my ICF certification, and actually just now I completed my ECHO listening intelligent coaching certification. So now I'm adding that tool to my toolbox as well.
Oh, excellent. And you did that certification through Brandon Miller, did you not?
Yes, I did.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that's one of the new tools and certifications he's bringing out there. So I'm psyched. I'm excited to have him on one of our panels too. So
Oh,
I think
wow.
that's going to be great with our all-star panel. So
I'll
excellent. Thank you so
definitely be
much.
there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So in terms of what you're going to be facilitating for the forum, what can people look forward to? Can you give us a little taste, a little teaser of what they will expect in your session?
Sure. So we're going to talk about cognitive biases and strengths. I called it how we think and how we can think better. And I was always been very interested in cognitive biases from two different perspectives. So first, as a psychologist, I'm very interested in people. I'm very interested in, how we think, how our mind works, the tricks it plays on our perception, how we make decisions. And the other part of it is that something that interests me is the social component. So how we see each other because of those cognitive biases that we experience. So actually, as an immigrant twice, right, mostly from Ukraine to Israel as a kid, I really suffered from social biases myself, right? Because
Okay.
I came from a different background, a different culture. So this topic is very, very personal to me. So in this session, we'll talk about cognitive biases, what they are, those just mental shortcuts, those survival shortcuts that our brain takes. We'll talk about situations that make us maybe more vulnerable to biases, right? Like when we need to make some rash decisions or just rely on our memory in general. And then we'll talk about strengths as well. We'll talk about how different strengths can make us more vulnerable to biases, but also how they can help us reduce some of those biases.
Oh, I love that. And I love, with your perspective, having moved, lived in now 3 countries at the very least, right? Ukraine to Israel and then here to the US. Obviously, I've lived in several different countries as well, mostly in Latin America. And I always do find it fascinating, not just the biases that come with culture, but I'm always really intrigued by cultural perceptions and strengths. And I know you're not necessarily participating on the panel, but I hope you will be there for the panel because we are introducing cultural perceptions as a panel this year and bringing in like international partners as well as domestic people, because I think I would love your opinion on how culture to some degree plays into that bias, because I think there is something about certain cultures and how receptive they are to strengths or how they perceive the assessment of strengths. And I'm just wondering if through the bias work, if you've encountered anything that would be interesting or useful for us to know.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that, in some cultures, people are more skeptical, right? You need to prove them something before they trust you versus
Right.
cultures where people, for example, they trust you first, they will go with whatever you offer or say or do. And then, if you don't prove yourself, then they will maybe
Right.
won't give you that faith. But in general, I think that, the more cultures you meet, right, the more people from different cultures or the more you live in different cultures, the more you have that openness. And I think that's why, one of the ways to reduce biases is just to collaborate with people who are really different from you,
Yeah.
right? Different backgrounds, cultures, opinions, and
Yes.
everything else. And then it's kind of opening your eyes to see those biases. And also it's easier for us to see biases in others. When you hear enough of that variety, you start to notice your own as well.
Yes, I love that. As somebody who has both traveled and lived in other countries, I have always said that if for any reason you ever put me like at a level of the Department of Education or something, I would make exchange programs mandatory learning. And that would mean like in middle school or high school, you would have, if you lived in New York, you'd have to go to Mississippi, or if you lived in California, you'd have to go to North Carolina, right? Like some sort of domestic. It doesn't have to be broad. I think just going to a different state can open you up to an entirely different way of seeing the world. And then in college, you would have to be an international one. Like you'd have to spend a semester. I just
Yeah.
feel like that kind of exposure is so important, because I don't think you realize the vacuum you live in until you are willing to step out of it.
Yeah. And,
Right.
I feel even, in my son's school, in the very domestic level. For example, in Israel, you start in the same class with the same teacher in your elementary school, for example, and you continue with them through the entire elementary school. And here, what I've learned is that the classes are mixed every year and the teachers are different every year. And I think that's for even this little change, even these little things opens that perspective a little bit wider for kids if we're talking
So
about
you get the same
education.
teacher through all of elementary school? They stay with the same kids?
The same class, the same kids, the teacher, I think there's like
Oh,
first
the
three
teacher
grades,
Okay.
but only once, like first three grades and 4 to 6,
Oh, wow.
just because it's very different, I guess, to be educator.
Interesting.
But they try to get you, with the same teacher, the same kids as much as possible.
Wow,
Same,
that's so
same
fascinating.
with middle school and high school.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that, because I don't know that, they don't have the same teacher, but like in Latin America, it's pretty common that wherever you start in kindergarten is where you finish high
Yeah.
school. Whereas here, it's like very likely, unless you go to a private school or a Catholic school, it's very likely that if you're going to public school, you're going to go to at least 3 schools in your lifetime, right? Like for elementary, middle, and high school. And so the idea of staying in the same place was always crazy to me, because I was like, my son's father would be like, nobody has to stay at the same school. I'm like, why? I went to 3 elementaries, I went to 2 elementary schools, I went to 2 middle schools, and I went to 1 high school. Like I went to 5 schools by the time I was 18. Some of those kids were the same, some of them weren't, but that was just my reality, right? That just felt normal. I didn't even think of it as anything weird or crazy or anything. That's just, how it is. So I love that. I'm really excited about your session. So with that in mind, I ask everybody a final question, and you have to pick the number 1 through 5. So pick a number, and I'll give you a question about the philosophy around the future of strengths, not the form itself, just the concept.
Right. So I'll go with 5.
Okay. So 5 is, what does a strengths-based future look like to you? And you can apply that to work, your community, the world, your family. But what does a strengths-based future look like to you?
Mhm. Right. So it's a great one. Um, so when I think about strengths-based future, first of all, I see, a world where people kind of get to lean into what makes them unique, right? I have number one, individualization, so that's uniqueness, where people really get to know each other, to understand each other, and then, ultimately to really care about each other as well. And I'm thinking both about, some intimate spaces, like if it's your family or like even your team, but also I think about those larger spaces like online communities even, or like entire industries. And I think that strengths can really create that care, right? Because they give us this common language. You talk about a lot about strengths as a language, so it really gives us that common language to understand each other. And when I think about our community, about the strengths coaching community, for example, I really feel that there is a lot of that care and collaboration, and we help each other and support each other. And what you do, Joe, of course, right? It's wonderful example
So
of
many
that.
people doing that. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think, one of the reasons I love doing this forum is being able to bring people together who are all throwing their pebble, right? And creating their ripple, right? I can't and don't want to coach 8 billion people, right? We all have our own strengths. We all have our own way of doing it. And so for me, a rising tide lifts all ships. And so if I know you're doing amazing work in a certain space, I want to be able to say, oh, you do strengths, but you do it in this, like, you need to talk to Marina, or you need to go check out Brandon, or like, I really want to lift everyone up so that everyone can find their tribe, right? I don't believe we have to be in competition with one another. I think we can all have the same end goal and want a more strengths-based future. But how we're going to get there is going to depend on each one of us to be really strong in our lanes.
Yeah.
Right. To go towards a common goal. So that's just a lot of what drives me to do this. So thank you so very much, Marina. I am super excited for your session. I know people will get a lot out of it. You did a wonderful session on metaphors that I know a lot of people really appreciated in one of our community sessions. So for those of you who don't know, besides the Future of Strengths Forum, we do ask coaches to come into our Practical Strengths community, and we do at least one community session every month where we get a chance to learn for other people out there doing what they do best and learning how to do more of that for ourselves. So thank you so much. I hope you guys will join us at this Future of Strengths Forum. We still have a really nice special right now that if you register before the end of the week, you get to come to our speakeasy workshop for free, which normally that's a $750 workshop. So I hope you guys will take advantage of it. It's a great way to get to know your fellow attendees. It's a great way to see another possible workshop that you could run, and a great way to just learn about yourself. So I hope you will join us out there. Thanks again, Marina, and I will see you soon.
Thank you, Joe. See you soon.